Doherty. Doherty.
Doherty. Okay,
So
so Rory. I'll just say Rory as I
this is my
usually
first
do.
name like everyone else. So.
Okay. Do you have any nicknames? Any cool tour nicknames?
Well, there's a funny story actually. I'll give you.
Wait, I have to do an intro before we start with the funny
Okay, I'll
story.
give you the story.
Okay, this is on the Roadcast audio talk number 2 and general on the Roadcast episode number 1,000. I don't remember. We did a lot, but this one's focusing on audio, and I'm here with my dear colleague Rory Doherty.
Yes.
Did I say it right?
Yes,
Okay.
it was good enough. Yeah.
Who is, I think, right now on the road with Rise Against
Mhm.
as their monitor engineer.
Yeah.
And you're also the front of house engineer for Bleed From Within
hmm
and other bands. We'll come to that. But first, I want to hear the funny story.
So it's one that I have very often on the road because of my accent. We were just talking about hopefully the subtitles pick me up well, but I was out with Bleed From Within, and we are in Niagara Falls, I believe, on the American side, and we have some like new friends that are hanging about with a band, and we jump on the bus, and it's Ali, the drummer from Bleed. He says to me, "Now, what you need to understand with the Scottish accent is I'm giving you my international accent right now, so everyone can understand me. But
Thank you. Thank you.
yes, you're welcome. But if we're talking to each other, we're all from the same area, just outside Glasgow, a little town called Hamilton, and the accent's a lot sharper. It's a lot quicker, and like instead of Rory, it'll be Rory. Like Rory, it's like the R's are rolled really quickly and stuff. And so Ali turns to me, and goes, "Rory, can you grab me the my jacket from my bunk or whatever?" And one of the Americans that we've just met, or I actually believe she's Canadian, but lives in America now. She turns around and goes, "Did you just call him Roadie?" So we all find that really funny. That lasted for a little bit, but I've told this story to multiple people. And now one of the bands I'm working for, Good Charlotte, the tour manager, Richard, now constantly calls me Roadie. Like Roadie is in like, a touring person. So people have started calling me Roadie constantly. So I don't know if that's going to catch on, but it's made it into email signatures as a joke sometimes and whatnot. So maybe I'll start getting called Roadie.
Now that I know this, I'm going to call you Roadie.
Perfect. I'm making it much worse for myself, so the
Well, I
legacy
have
will
this
go.
nickname. I have this nickname that Vicky, my on the roadcast, my usual on the roadcast co-host, she calls me Moonshine Pickle, and that's been in emails as well. I'm glad it didn't catch on, and I would ask everyone not to use it.
It's maybe a bit long.
It's a little too long, but Roadie is good, so we'll use
Yeah,
it.
I can say.
So you were just saying you also work for Good Charlotte. Do you do monitors for them as well?
Yes, I do monitors. It's me, myself, and Chris Pollock who do Rise Against. It's the same kind of team that we jumped and did. We've done Good Charlotte for almost a year now. There's been a handful of shows, and then tours have started kicking off later in the time we've been working for them. So it's been busy. Everyone, I was a little bit late onto this podcast because we were doing Australia and New Zealand with Good Charlotte, and that was finished on what day is today? Wednesday. That finished on Sunday, I think, or Saturday, and we flew straight from New Zealand into rehearsal with Rise Against. Our friend was looking after rehearsal. We took over from him, and that we tried to get as quickly onto US time as we could. I managed to do it reasonably well, but didn't sleep last night very well. And yes, I had to take a nap, so sorry for being late, Connie.
That's totally fine. It's like 11:30 p.m. for me and
Yeah,
5:30 p.m. for you
yes,
right now.
yes,
You're
yes.
in Montreal.
Yes, I'm in Montreal right now. Yes, we did our first show on the tour last night in Providence, Rhode Island, and then we jumped on the bus and we have a nice little day off in Montreal before two shows in Montreal back to back. So I should be nice and rested come the next couple of days.
So switching between bands, what's your favorite thing to do? monitors or front of house?
Oh, front of house is easier. I think that's a big common misconception as well, is especially, I had some discussions around it from jumping between front of house with Bleed From Within. When I initially got the gig with Rise Against, it was monitors. And I mean, it's still monitors, but it was the misunderstanding with people who don't do audio between monitors and front of house is massive, and I think it comes down to the fact that loads of bands have like in-ear rigs, these pre-racked stuff, and they just roll in and connect with their phone, and they can do it themselves. And I think that's such a fantastic solution for bands.
Until a certain size of band, but then that's not possible anymore.
Yeah. Some bands are getting on really well with like, Bleed From Within, Seosin, among others, August Burns Red. These bands, these are bands that I've worked with that don't have, and they're big bands. They really are big bands in the alternative world, but the budgets just aren't the same. The more extreme you get. So yeah, the misunderstanding of what a monitor engineer can do can give you, and the emergency situations they can get you out of just by being there, and and having their own console and faders and stuff is huge. And again, I remember when I got the gig, there was comments of like, yeah, but it's just monitors. And then I remember turning around to a colleague, another audio colleague on that tour, and being like, would you much rather do front of house or monitors? He was like, I'll never do monitors. There's no way. It's far too difficult. There you go.
Interesting.
So I do enjoy monitors. I love monitors. There's instant gratification by being side stage, and the band are interacting with you, and other crew are interacting with you, and it's really good fun. It's a much more of a party vibe. Not saying we're all partying there, but we're on Good Charlotte, me and the playback guy are dancing together, and the tour manager Richard's coming up, and we're all jumping at Lifestyles and Rich and the Famous together and stuff, and it's good fun up there. But front of house is a lot more simple and easier, and you're working for yourself, really.
It seems to be more prestigious. It seems to be there is this hierarchy of front of house is on top of it, and everything below is like just a
I
stepping stone for
I
becoming
think
front of house.
I think I agree with you, but from people who don't do the job. If you were to go and ask any front of house engineer who's got the harder gig, who would be more respected if you put it on pen and paper, I think the front of house engineers are always going to say monitors, and monitors are always going to say monitors, because you just see it at sound checks, you see it at first rehearsals with bands, like the first time you've started working with a band and doing monitors, you are just getting, you're just ducking punches left, right, and centre just to keep it going, and it's something that I had to get better at. But I've only been doing monitors for 2 bands now, really. So, hopefully, each first rehearsal gets easier and easier. And this is the exact same thing I used to say about playback engineers. I used to think, man, I could be a playback engineer until doing Good Charlotte and working with a real playback engineer, and I was like, absolutely not. I'm never doing that, because the amount of last minute changes. You get 3 guitar players being like, my MIDI's wrong, we need to change this MIDI. Everyone's shouting MIDI commands, guitar techs are asking for changes all the time through rehearsals. It's chaos. And I have absolutely massive respect now for pro playback engineers, man. They are dodging bullets left, right, and centre, and fixing things on the fly. Even like, musicians missing cues when like there's like, I didn't even know you could do loops in Ableton and stuff. Like when it's looping round and they're like, hyping the crowd up and getting ready. If a cue gets miscommunicated or whatever, they're then pausing the track and scrubbing through to get it back on time and dropping them in on time. It's chaos, man. Like, I never realised that was a thing. So
It is a big thing. Just
yeah.
the bigger the tours. I mean, funny enough, backing track or like people doing playback is very often a job that is like an extra to a job that someone already does. Whereas I think it's so scary to do playback. And I've witnessed a show, I'm not going to say which band that. I was on a tour with another band supporting this other band, and their playback stuff dropped out. And it was 20 minutes of showstop. And that
Yeah.
playback guy was scrambling. I was like, I would
Yeah.
fucking die. I would die on the spot if that was me. I do never want to do playback ever.
Yeah, I again, it's that's it's a shame they didn't have like a bit of more of a plan B, I suppose, because when your show relies so heavily on it, when your show relies so heavily on it that you cannot play without the playback rig, that's a bit of a shame. I get it. I totally understand. But come on, let's get the pedal boards out and jump your patches yourself and play without intros. Maybe it's easier said than done. I know.
Going back to the question I had, what do you like more, monitors in front of the house? You said monitors is more difficult,
and
but
more and more instantly gratifying. But I think front of house is still the passion. I'm always, hey, it's still on my Instagram says Rory Doherty FOH,
yeah.
even though I've I still do front of house. I mean, Bleed for then we're in Australia in last October. That was the last front of house? Or I covered Salesin for a little bit in November maybe, but yeah, I've not done front of house this year, but maybe we
You
will.
know what? I
What?
should change my Instagram to I think it says audio engineer slash tour manager. I think I should do front of house engineer slash tour manager because
Yeah.
maybe that gets me more front of house shops. Even though all I do now is front of house and tour managing, but
Yeah.
I'm honestly, after hearing what you just said, it's like maybe I should go back to doing monitors every once in a while because I started out doing monitors for like 4 or 5 years before I had my first ever front of house gig. So maybe I should go back to doing monitors to be humbled.
Yeah, it's humbling, man. The only time I've ever thought I may be fired was on monitors, and it's one of those gigs. I think you don't really understand it until you're put in that situation. But once you again, I've seen a comment recently where somebody was talking about the two greatest monitor engineers they ever worked with were both masters in psychology. And you're playing the game a little bit. You're if you understand people, not saying you have to be a psychologist, but if you understand people, like you get on far better. And I think that's why I've not been fired, because I understand people and I understand, when to avoid confrontation, when to get, and sometimes being confrontational isn't the worst thing on the planet. Like, as long as you're doing it with respect, you can be confrontational.
Absolutely.
People give you a very, very and as you as an audio engineer, and they as maybe a musician who kind of knows what they're talking about but isn't filling you with confidence, give you a suggestion and you can just be like, look, yeah, like, we can try it, but I think we're going to find that it's not going to work. And just not being a yes person, like, that's the I think that's maybe why I've stayed in a job, because I am, against my own maybe best judgment, a bit overconfident or confrontational or whatever. Like, I do love a debate. I love a debate, as my friends will tell you. But it's
We have debated a little bit too in the past,
I
so I
love it.
know.
I love it. As long as no one's shouting and screaming at each other, debate is the most healthy thing on this planet. I think we need more of it. To be honest, I think everyone needs to debate more and shout and post on Instagram list. But especially our,
Eh,
especially our world leaders. but
okay, yeah.
the yes, I have been in that position when you feel like I thought I was getting sent home, like 2 shows into a tour, because a musician had just got something, they just got something in their head that changes weren't happening when they were happening. Tour managers asking for a pack, telling me what's going on, and I'm like, look, it's not pretty in there. Here you go. And to be totally fair to that musician, they had stuff going on at home and some very, very serious stuff that ended up not turning out too great and stuff, and with family, and you can't hold that against people. It's just a phase in their life, and we are fantastic friends and colleagues now. So it's really hard. You just have to not take it personally on things like monitors. And there are many gigs, and there's a band that we've all heard of that just go through crew like underwear, and the monitor engineer position on that is like a 4-week thing. It,
Wow.
the vocalist on that gig, and I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to name
Like,
names, but we all
you
know
can you can tell me after the podcast because I'm still looking
yeah,
for work
I'm
this
sure
year. So maybe a little
you are
4 week
never
excursion.
you're never going to be surprised. But it's just like guitar techs, monitor engineers especially. It's like a 4 week thing. It's just like circus, and it's known that you just charge enough to get you through those 4 weeks and cancel what other work you need to. But yeah, it's monitors, man. It's like the quickest turning job going. Has to be, right. I've been in Rise Against for nearly 3 years. I've been in Good Charlotte for nearly a year. And I've not been sacked from it either. That I feel good about myself.
Yeah, you can be confident about keeping those jobs, I think.
I hope.
So here's another question because you told me like bad stories that happened. You thought you were going to be fired, whatever. What's a very like rewarding or good moment that you've had doing your job, either front of house or monitors, where you're like, oh, like everything clicks, you're standing there, it feels awesome, you'll never forget this moment.
I think more of my kind of gratifying stuff has been kind of off stage, and it's not necessarily comments about work. Don't get me wrong. There's been like really nice moments and wholesome moments that people have said to me like very recently as well. But I think it's more just connecting with, like, making relationships with people that you never thought you would, and meeting people that you never thought you would. And I don't know. There was a moment that stuck with me recently. I think was after the first night. Been working for Good Charlotte for a while, and it was the first night of the Australia New Zealand show, which was obviously like a couple of weeks ago, and it was after the show. And I went, luckily I have a monitor tech on that gig, so they were save my file, and they were taking care of getting everything like packed up, and I would go back and help them. But usually the first job I will do is we'll go and kind of debrief with the members of the band, and collect the in-ears in so they don't go missing. Musicians can walk off and go talking,
Mm.
wearing them and stuff, so they become hard to find. And I'd collected them all, and I always go into Benji and Joel, the twins' room last. And Joel just said to me, he's like, I don't think I would still be able to do this job if it wasn't for how good you were at your job. He said, I think he's always struggled with his voice and hearing himself properly. And I kind of got brought onto that gig to transition them to ears, because they'd always been in like a wedges band. Joel had 4 wedges on the rider that I saw. He had 4, M2s around him, so like really loud. And yeah, that was something I think that will stick with me for quite a while. That Joel said that was a really nice thing to say. Those guys are really, really down to earth, and they don't shy away with making you feel appreciated and loved. And yeah, I'm very grateful for that moment. That one will stick with me for quite a while. The fact that he was he felt like at points he wouldn't be able to do this again because of his hearing and stuff, and he was like, he just said thank you, and you've made me realize that I can keep going because of the in-ear mixes, and how good and how well he can hear himself now and can control his voice and stuff. And yeah, that was a nice moment.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I know how difficult it is for musicians to transition to in-ears. I've did that with the band, like the whole never been on in-ears to we love it now. But it's difficult and it's a step-by-step process and it takes some time, but it is so much better. And I
Oh,
always get annoyed because, I work in
no,
punk and hardcore a lot. And there's a lot of like older musicians who like think it's not cool to use in-ears, and I'm always like, you're gonna be dead in
yeah.
the next couple of years. In-ears are so advanced at this point; it's so amazing, and I'm here to help you. And I do a lot of the router and the iPad mixes and stuff, and giving them access or not if I don't think they're fit to do it themselves or whatever. But it is a process, but it is very advanced at this point, and it is so helpful, and it just makes the show, it can make a show so much better, also bring stage volume down, everything. It's just
It's
perfect.
there's literally no benefit to not doing it.
Except for maybe it costs money, but that's a one-time investment, and
Yeah,
I would
and
Yeah.
it's think of it as like hearing insurance at the end of the day. It's you know, people spend far more on much stupider stuff. So yeah, I can't. I do understand the, oh, I won't look cool with it. I kind of get it. Interestingly, I heard enough recently that Liam Gallagher on the Oasis reunion shows wasn't on any of yours. Noel was, 'cause I think I saw loads of photos, but I think Liam was like, you know, you wearing the bucket hat and you know, and whatnot. But I understand where the argument comes from, and it's
But
very
it's your
hard.
hearing. Your hearing is one of the most essential parts about your whole career.
Yeah,
Protect it.
yeah,
Um, Another question, because we're talking about a lot about the like monitor and front of house difference, which in this episode, and let's dive a little deeper into that. What are the different approaches for you mixing front of house or monitors? Because it's a very different kind of mixing.
yeah. So front of house, you're mixing for yourself. You know, as much as you want to say, you know, you're mixing for all the audience to have an experience, and yeah, you are, but at a certain point that becomes the system engineer's job if you're on bigger like arena shows or like large theater or whatnot. There's only so much you can do with the PA. The PAs are so incredible these days. You're not going to get up there and redeploy the PA yourself. You know, you can't do that in a club. So you can just do what you can do with your skill set, your console, etc., etc. So yeah, I see that as like, you know, you're mixing for yourself to make it sound great for you, and hopefully everyone vibes with it. Monitors is far more, yeah. So monitors is far more reactive. Front of house is proactive, right?
Right.
Um, monitors. Do you want me to go into like workflow differences or just mindset?
Let's start with mindset, and if we have time, do some workflow stuff too, because I feel like a lot of people watching these is are just like starting out and maybe also mixing monitors from front of house a lot.
Great, cool. That's a difficult one with when it comes to workflow. We could go on. We could go on to that for a million hours. Um, But yeah, monitors, I'm still trying to mix it to sound as good as possible. You know, Chris Pollock, who I do Rise Against the Good Charlotte with, he's on front of house. Fantastic engineer, like really, really dedicated engineer. He brought up a great phrase that sticks with me now. And the thing is, when doing monitors, when I've done monitors for bands, even in like in house, just like on and off, the people have always been like, "Well, that sounds really good." Like, you know, it sounds really mixed, and I'm like, "What's that all about?" And Chris Pollock said, "Dude, they're just balancing inputs. You know, these people are just turning the gain up, turning the high pass up, and balancing how the inputs are. They're not making it sound mixed." And coming from front, I think this is maybe why I'm getting on better at monitors than who knows, but because I'm mixing it, I want it to sound as good as possible. I'm doing a Q mix for me that sounds as sick as I think it's sick. Sorry, as sick as I think it sounds, right? And so I want to be able to give that pack out to guests that are standing around or other engineers that have been hanging around. Last night, Luke Buckby came, Trivium's TM, an old monitor engineer and really good friend. And, you know, I was happy to give him a pack and be like, "Here, man, how does it sound?" You know. So I'm trying to make it sound really, really good in my mix, and everyone else's mix is like my mix with their thing just on top and minus what they don't like. So yeah, I'm trying to make every input sound as rad as possible. I never even thought to balance inputs. I never thought that was a thing. I just wanted it to sound really good.
When it comes to stuff like um, compression or like a lot of EQing, what I've heard a lot of monitor engineers say is you want to keep it as real as possible because they need to hear their own tones. They need to hear blah blah blah. Um, and like they need to know their dynamic range, so you can't compress it too much. What do you think
I
about that?
I Yeah, yeah, again, if that works for people, that works for people. I think with monitors, there's so many ways to skin a cat. There is whatever works, right, for that musician that you're working with. Like one technique I use on one guy could be totally wrong for another guy. All I can say is the workflow I've been doing for Good Charlotte and Rise Against is completely the same. And also like dialing in ears for Bleed From Within on their M32C and stuff, that seems to have worked as well. I'm the way I guess I look at it is I'm mixing it like a record. I used to do studio stuff. That was how I got into the live world, was starting with studio stuff. And I'm just trying
So
to
maybe
I'm just making it sound like a record. And the only thing that I've adapted maybe is like absolutely compressing the main vocal, so that they don't do this kind of thing, to help front of house event effectively, just to like keep it pinned to their mouth. That's the only thing I would really change up, is like pin the vocal more than I probably would from front of house. But yeah.
what I'm hearing is you think if you have front of house or also studio experience, you might approach a monitor mix a little differently.
Yes. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think that's what's worked for me anyway. I think I can't get in the mindset of how you think somebody would enjoy the gig listening to an un-EQ'd, uncompressed snare. You wouldn't be delivering, like, I'm thinking about a drummer. How would they be delivering the stick consistently? How would they be playing the way the front of the house engineer wants them to play if it wasn't being treated in the same way? Again, I've not used that workflow of balancing inputs, so it might work for people, but for me, I want it to sound really, really, smacky, attacky,
And your
and
bands
muscle
like it.
fluid, and like, yeah.
So is there any like mixing hack or mixing trick where you're like, oh, I always do that. It's kind of fun and I like to pass that on to other people?
I love using like side chaining. Um, I oh okay.
On
I'm,
what specifically?
can I get two? Can I get two?
Yeah, you can get to.
less less EQ, the better. I think a lot of people don't understand EQ is phase, right? It is a lack of phase correlation. The more EQ you do, the more you're messing up that signal, right? Unless you're using a linear phase EQ, which causes low delay and etc. But my new workflow, when I moved to Digico from like, all the other desks, when I got a Digico with like less D11 that I'd never get to use anymore, but I'm still a Digico guy through and through. And, being able to bus channels to groups and groups to groups and groups to groups, etc. I would take, kick in and out, send that to a group, and the group gets treated. Snare top and bottom to a group, and then the group gets treated. I'm not doing any treatment on the channels themselves. Less EQ, EQ at 1 point rather than 2 points. Less phase, more phase coherence, and then that works. Then what I would do, getting onto my second trick, would be bussing everything into a master bus. Bussing everything into like an instrument bus and then a vocal bus. And then what I'd do is would sidechain the vocal bus into the instrument bus, like into a mid-side, like dynamic EQ, like F6 is like the one I would probably go to. F6 is really unfortunately a Waves one, but it's really handy, really easy to use. And then what I would usually do is use the vocal to duck the center of the mix in certain frequencies where it clashes with like guitars and stuff, like 3 to 6K and maybe like 800 hertz or somewhere that the vocal is really present. But I'm only ducking it in the center, so like the guitars are all staying really wide up the side and the cymbals and stuff. But just in that center pocket where usually most of your vocals are going to live, it's ducking that down so that everything up the side stays intact. So when you have a nice stereo image, if you're in like an arena that has like left, right, and then like side hangs and 270s or whatever, you're getting a really still nice intact stereo image, and the vocals just like tucking in the guitars where it needs to tuck them in, etc. And then you can do it in the same way with if you put on another one in the chain, you could do the snare in mid-side, ducking like guitars. Sorry, you couldn't do that in the same chain. This would be way before that. But you could put a mid-side thing on the guitar bus maybe, and use the snare to duck 200 hertz in the guitars, where it's like if it's more heavy metal stuff and there's palm muting, the 200 hertz can be getting ducked by the snare, so that's not clashing. Yeah, I think sidechain is really powerful in the best of times, but when you're doing it in mid side as well, it's even more powerful. So that would be my one, or sorry, that'd be my two mixing tips, I suppose.
Yeah, I could see you coming from a studio background with all the side chaining and the ducking and the bussing and everything. It tracks that you said you come from a studio background, but it's really handy in a live environment. I mean, we're also, as you said, talking about like big arena shows or whatever. You have a great PA. You start out with one of the best setups you can imagine. I mean, it is definitely more difficult in a smaller setup, but even then it can help a
100%.
lot, especially when you want to make your vocal heard and you don't have the best PA in a small room and
Yeah,
shitty acoustics. Especially then it could really help you out.
that's one thing that I think we need to touch on and remember is, okay, maybe it gets more stressful the higher up in the stages you get in your career, but it gets easier, I believe. It gets
Yes.
easier. My first gigs were in the garage in Glasgow in a 100 cap room, and you're doing everything. You're mixing all three bands. It's very rare you're getting a touring engineer in a 100 cap room. You're doing all three bands. You're setting the lights up. You're cabling everything. You're patching everything. You're getting everything out. You're lifting all the wedges. You're lifting the console. It's
Mhm.
you're that I don't want to forget that you're working much harder lower down in the rung of the ladders effectively. Doesn't mean you get less respect. It doesn't mean you're less talented. It's sometimes I'm like, fuck man, like they are. Sorry for swearing. it's yeah, I'm a roadie, right? But yeah, I never forget that that's the grind that you go through in the smaller cap venues. Even
That is exactly what you have to do to end up
yeah.
working for Good Charlotte and Rise Against and Bleed from
Yeah,
Within and
yeah, and
everything.
I'm very grateful for being where I am and having monitor techs on certain gigs and getting massive, expensive consoles just hired, like, and being having the choice to choose my console and what I work with and the toys I get to work with. None of that is lost on me. I'm very, very, very thankful and grateful that I'm in this position today. It can all be taken away. I could lose my hearing tomorrow, and I think it's very good to be thankful for um, the dice you've rolled in life and where we are, um, but yeah, I just wanted to touch base on that one. I still remember those days, and I get very jealous when I look at other venues around the world. Like when you go to the Netherlands, especially, you're in a 500 cap. When you're in a 500 cap room in the Netherlands, because their government actually cares about the arts, you have a stage manager, two lighting people, and you've got two audio people, And when I was in a 550 cap room in Glasgow cutting my teeth, it was me and a lighting person. And it was
Yeah.
it was a really long room with stairs up to front of house. So you patched the backing tracks for this band in the wrong channel. Who's going down to fix it?
But yeah, I don't.
Who's running all the way back down to stage from front of house? This guy. So yeah, it gets jealous, and like the amount of space you have in American venues at that size and stuff. Loading docks, and there's usually more stagehands. There's always stagehands in the US. Yeah, it's just a different game out in different countries. So if you're having the grind right now in a small venue and you're like, oh man, I don't know if I can be bothered with all this hard work, just stick at it. It gets easier as you get up. Maybe it gets more stressful, but it gets more easy.
Yeah,
Physically.
I don't even know if it gets more stressful or not. It's just a different kind of work. But hey, I used to work in a jazz club that used to be a sex movie theater, and that shaped me. I did a lot of very interesting gigs in there, and it's all worth it because you're building up your skill, your reputation, and everything, and then you land somewhere like you. And I think that's a great note to end the podcast. Thank you so much for doing this. I love the all the insights on monitors as well, and the comparison of front of house. And I think if anyone has more questions about that, I'm sure they're allowed to shoot you a message.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I'm always happy to absolutely bore people to tears with my with talking about consoles, touring, and mixing. I, li-
Hey, it's my
I love
favorite thing too.
I love it. So thank you so much for having me, Connie. I hope to get to see you in person soon.
Yeah, and well, if you ever need a monitor assistant for any of your bands, let me know. I'll come and help.
Will do. Will, and you've got an O1, right?
I have an yeah, my O1 is running out. Here's
Oh
another
yeah,
topic
same.
that I haven't even touched on in this podcast yet, but work visas. My O1 is running out in April next month, but I have an O2 now with a band.
That's a Visas is a good one to talk about. That's a
Oh yeah,
good podcast.
I'll remember that for the next episode.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Have a great tour with Rise Against and whatever's coming after that and after that and after that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'll see you along the road.
I'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.